For the second straight game, at least they won.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And folks, once again, Syracuse basketball, they play against supposedly an inferior opponent, and they barely, by the skin of their teeth, win the game. That's right. Syracuse basketball beat Colgate 74-72 tonight, and we're going to break it all down here on Locked On Syracuse. Before we get to all that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I don't know what you want me to say. Do you want me to be happy? Do you want me to be sad? I think the best way to do this is I tell you how I really feel. We're going to break down the game. We're going to talk about how Syracuse got very lucky in the end. We're going to discuss this defense, which is atrocious through 2 games. And then we're going to talk about what's next. Sound good? Cool. And I apologize about the background. Apparently, we're having software issues here, but don't worry, it's not going to impact this podcast. It's just, well, this is why you don't have the regular background here, the green screen and everything. Apologize for that, but it's all good, right? So Syracuse, once again, is fortunate to beat a team that it's expected to not only beat, but beat by a big margin. We talked about going into this season how last year, Syracuse did a nice job in the non-conference against opponents it was supposed to beat. It did. It did a nice job. The issue was in a lot of their wins, they wouldn't dominate their opponent, and you need to dominate the inferior opponents when they're deciding who gets to go to the tournament in March. And we're going to get to what's next, I promise you, because right now, tournament is the furthest thing on my mind, but I just wanted to point that out. Syracuse basketball was so lucky in this one. Did they win? Yes, they did. They did win. They found a way. But they were so lucky. How many times do you want me to say they were so lucky? 40 seconds left. Eddie Lampkin makes a nice pass inside to Chris Bell. Do I have that right? No, actually, it was the opposite. Chris Bell makes a nice pass inside to Eddie Lampkin. Eddie Lampkin makes the layup. And Syracuse goes up 74-72 with 43 seconds left. And you know what they need now? They need a stop. Maybe even multiple stops. Turns out it had to be 3 stops. Colgate calls timeout. And they get a good look. They get a good look on a 3-pointer. Jyare Davis, he had a late contest on a right wing 3. And it went in and out. It was a decent late contest, but again, a late contest. They weren't on him. Fortunate that it didn't go in. Davis ends up being the one that has to shoot the 1-and-1 because Colgate has to foul. And he misses the 1-and-1. Okay. Yes, like you want them to make your obviously you need them to make free throws, but occasionally they're going to miss a 1-and-1. It's just how it works. Colgate gets the ball back. Jalen Cox, otherwise known as Derrick Rose in this one, misses a free throw line jumper. It was a pretty easy one. And Jyare Davis gets a big boy defensive rebound. It was a great rebound by Jyare Davis. He skied up to go get it. So once again, he has a chance to effectively end the game. There's about 7.7 seconds left on the clock here. He's got a chance to end the game. Syracuse is up 74-72 It's a 1-1 once again. But if you hit both your free throws with less than 8 seconds left, you take a 4-point lead. The game's over as long as you don't foul. Game's over. But Jyare Davis, once again at the free throw line, and I don't want to sound like I'm picking on Jyare Davis, but I'm describing the ending to this game, and he had a very big part in the ending of this game. He once again misses the free throw, but luckily, Lucas Taylor is there for the offensive rebound off a free throw because Colgate just didn't box him out. I mean, that's inexcusable by Colgate. How do you not box out on a free throw? I mean, that is like basketball 101. You got to box out your man on a free throw. But they don't. So now Lucas Taylor has a chance to end the game. Again, 1-1. If you make one, you go up 75-72. And you know what? The worst that happens is you go to overtime. But once again, 3 straight times, they have a 1-1 to effectively end the game. And they miss all 3 of the front end of the 1-1. Lucas Taylor misses. And luckily enough, Colgate, for the first time all game long, tries to push the pace, and they can't convert. That was the first time it felt like all game because they were pushing the pace at an extremely high level. Colgate had 22 fast break points compared to Syracuse, who had 2 fast break points. 20, I'm getting a tongue twister right now. 22-2 in fast break points for Colgate. But at the very end of the game, a guy stumbles near the baseline, and the game ends. Syracuse wins 74-72. I was watching this game. I watched the broadcast with Matt Park and Eric Devendorf. And Devendorf mentioned that Syracuse, at the end of their last practice, was working on their free throws for 20 minutes after practice. We might need to bump that up to an hour and 20 minutes. My goodness. 74-72. Syracuse free throws, they were 4 of 8. So they didn't even get a lot of attempts, but they were 4 of 8. Last game, I believe they were, 60% from the free throw line? As Brent Axe likes to say, free throws matter. And actually, Syracuse was fortunate because Colgate wasn't particularly good from the free throw line. They were 6 for 11. I don't know what it is with the dome, but apparently nobody can shoot free throws. They were super lucky. Super duper lucky. I guess the silver lining is that Syracuse won. Once again, they won. That's better than a loss. They avoid complete disaster. Right? They beat Colgate for 2 straight years. That's a plus, right? They now have a winning streak once again against Colgate. Cool. You're supposed to. You're never supposed to lose to Colgate, but I guess not. This is probably the maddest I have ever been recording a podcast in a Syracuse victory. Because if you're just tuning in right now, you probably can't tell unless you look at the screen on today's show that Syracuse actually won this game 74-72. I don't really think they deserve to win, but they won. They won. So we've established that Syracuse at the end of a game got incredibly lucky. At least last game. Sorry, I was going to cut to the next segment, but at least last game, they made a great defensive play at the end. Chris Bell had an incredible defensive play, ripping the ball away and sealing it with 2 free throws. This was just luck. I mean, Colgate just wasn't making their shots when they had it, and then they turned the ball over at the very end. At least they won, right? At least Syracuse won the game. So now we'll segue. We've established that Syracuse got very lucky at the end, but they won, and they're 2-0 on the season. But coming up, we're going to talk about this defense or lack thereof. Hey, Locked On Syracuse fans, listen up. You need to download the Roy app. You have heard us talk about Roy this season and how they are revolutionizing the NIL industry. Roy allows you, the fan, to have a say in who gets the NIL money. And here's what I absolutely love about Roy. You get your money back if that player transfers, all right? Transfer protection. We all know that the transfer portal is chaotic, but you know what? If that player transfers, you're protected. You get your money back. Roy is helping us keep our team intact, and it's actually good for the game long term. You could show your support for any player. I mean, I would say for Kyle McCord in the last game for Syracuse football, because he had 390 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was not the reason why Syracuse football lost that game to Boston College. By depositing a little appreciation onto that player's account. To do that, download the Roy app. You can see what the logo looks like if you're watching on YouTube, or join Roy.com. Now let's spotlight the Roy Locked On Player of the Week, which I just said is Kyle McCord. Every contribution counts, 10, 20 bucks. It all adds up and is going to help your favorite players stay put. Join me and show some of the players some love, like Kyle McCord for last week. Download the Roy app or go to joinroy.com today. Use promo code Locked On. Every athlete from every team is there. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Go to joinroy.com for full terms. Roy, support the players. Change the game. I'm going to open the floor for this segment. All right? I'm going to open the floor. I know this isn't live, but I want you to comment right now. Who on Syracuse basketball is a good defender? Who on Syracuse is a good defender? Because I don't know. I don't know. And I don't have the answer. I want to be clear with you all in that I don't think it's a lack of effort per se. I think they are trying. And that is the bare minimum, but I think that is something that we do need to establish, because sometimes you can tell when players are not giving it their 100%. They are giving it their 100%. And I think that's a huge issue, that this is their 100% on defense. Or at least that's what I think so. They're trying. They just might not be very good. And we thought going into the season that defense could be a problem. Certainly looks that way. If you're trying to draw comparables to football and basketball, I mean, they're kind of identical. Syracuse's offense, I mean, it wasn't particularly good in this one, but even in kind of a poor effort on offense, they still managed to put up 74 points. We talked about how last game against Lemoyne, they put up well over 80 and they didn't shoot the ball particularly well. So I think their offense is going to be fine. Just like Syracuse football, their offense is fine, aside from the Pitt game. But their offense is generally going to be okay. They're going to score points. They're going to give you a chance to win. But unlike in football, you play one side of the field unless you're Travis Hunter. In basketball, you got to play both sides. You got to play both sides of the floor. And I don't know who on Syracuse you can trust on the defensive end. I really don't. And that's why I'm opening the floor. Please comment in the comment section below. Who's a good defender on Syracuse basketball? Because I'm out of answers. And we're 2 games into the season. I think one particular problem in this game is that they weren't getting back on defense. They just weren't getting back at times. I read you guys the stat. in the last segment that Colgate had 22 fast break points. They were pushing the tempo, and Syracuse could not compete with that. They could not compete with that. There was one play that I highlighted late in this game. I want to find it. I got it. So Elijah Moore, it was at the under 8-minute mark. Okay, so under 8 minutes left in the second half of this game. Elijah Moore, who I thought showed some good promise in this one. Elijah Moore, what did he do? Elijah Moore totals in this game, the true freshman, 8 points, 4 of 10 from the field, 0 for 3 from 3-point, but played 20 minutes. He was pretty good. He's pretty good. His shot will eventually fall, but he's more athletic than I thought. But regardless, Elijah Moore misses a baseline jumper. And it was a kind of a big rebound. And nobody gets back. And Colgate pulls within 2, 66-64. At one point, Syracuse, I believe, led by 13 in this game, and that was the bucket that led Colgate to pulling within 2 of this game. That is just one example of how Syracuse did not get back on defense. There were plenty of others if we want to go back and rewatch this whole game together. The blow-bys also were an issue for Syracuse basketball. They were a problem against Lemoyne, and they were once again a problem. Jalen Cox, once again, might as well have been Derrick Rose in this one. I mean, my goodness. I mean, he's a good player, but let's talk about Jalen Cox for Colgate. I don't want to minimize him, but I'm looking at his numbers right now, okay? I'm pulling it up. He's averaging 10 points so far this season. Last year, he averaged 5 points. He's a pretty good shooter as well. He's not a bad player by any means, but they made him look a whole lot better than he actually is. They mentioned on the broadcast that he's a track star, and you could tell because they could not stay in front of him. Take your pick once again at the guard spot. J.J. Starling, who fouled out at the end of this game, could not stay in front of him. Jaquan Carlos could not stay in front of him. When you're not getting back on defense and you're getting blown by, well then, how did you end up winning? I'll tell you how they ended up winning. Colgate was missing. Sometimes it's a make or miss sport. Basketball is pretty simple sometimes. Did you make the shot or did you miss the shot? It doesn't matter how good of a look they get. If they miss, they miss. But what's important on defense is that the process is good. There was a moment, I believe, in the first half of this game. Maybe it was early in the second half, but I believe it was in the first half of this game. I remember it very vividly. I don't remember the score. But Syracuse was off to a good start in this one, and they were kind of starting to go on a run late in the first half, They had a great defensive possession, and a guy on Colgate hits a corner 3 late in the shot clock with Jyare Davis right in his face. It was a great contest. I thought he was pretty much as on time as you're going to get. He didn't foul the three-point shooter, and the guy just made it. And you know what you got to do in that situation? You just tip your cap and say, you know what? He made a contested 3 at the end of a shot clock. What are you going to do? I can live with that. I can live with that. What I can't live with is getting blown by on defense, not getting back on defense. Sure, it's great when Colgate decides they want to miss 1,000 layups, but I promise you, and we're going to get to the upcoming schedule for Syracuse basketball because they're going to play Texas pretty soon, a ranked Texas team. When you play that team, they're not going to miss their layups as much. They're not. Colgate shot 44% in this game. That's not even overwhelming. They were 10 of 27 from 3. This is what I mean when Syracuse got really, really lucky. Imagine if Colgate was somewhat hot in this one. They weren't really hot. They had moments where they got hot. They had moments where they had a big scoring spurt, but they never really could put it all together, even when they were getting their looks. I apologize that this is the maddest I have ever been in a Syracuse win. I really am. And I don't think it's a lack of effort. I really don't. I think the players try. I do. But that was not a good performance. And they were lucky to win. They really were. So we talked about how Syracuse got lucky. The defense, not very good. So coming up, we'll talk about what's next for Syracuse basketball. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you got a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Let's talk about Syracuse football for a second. They are an 8.5-point underdog at Cal on Saturday with the money line at plus 235. You think Syracuse can cover, or better yet, pull off an upset and get their 7th win of the season, well, you can bet it on FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. As mad as I am after this game, and truly, I am very disappointed despite a Syracuse win, we have to acknowledge they won. They won the game. And with that win, they are 2-0 to start the season. A 4-point win against Lemoyne at home to start, and a 2-point win against Colgate at home, otherwise known as Duke and Kentucky, to start a season. But they're 2-0. On Saturday, they got to play Youngstown State. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I have to do some research into Youngstown State because right now I don't know too much about them, but I wouldn't overlook anyone. I don't think Syracuse has earned that right. They have not earned the right to where we can just sit here and have circle wins on the schedule. I don't think there are any more circle wins. They're going to play Cornell later this season. They're going to play Albany, and they're going to play Bucknell, right? They're going to play those teams. Would you classify those as auto wins at this point? I wouldn't. Not after what we saw against Lemoyne. Not after what we saw against Colgate. No. The cupcakes don't feel like cupcakes right now. I think that's what the disappointing part of this is. These are games you're supposed to dominate. They're not exhibition games. We saw what Syracuse did against exhibition games. Those were D2 opponents, and they made them look like D2 opponents. These are D1. Lemoyne's D1. Colgate's D1. Colgate's a tournament team pretty much every single year, but they're in a one big conference. They just win their conference every year. Still not the greatest team. And by the way, when Colgate makes the tournament every year, they don't actually win a tournament game. I mentioned in the preview yesterday, heading into this one, that Colgate, they've made the tournament in 5 of the past 6 seasons. But what I left out of that podcast, is because I didn't really find it relevant, but it matters right now, is that when they get to the tournament, they haven't won. They haven't won a game. They've lost in the first round every single time. This is not they won, but you should still be blowing out a team like Colgate. And they didn't. I thought they were at some point early in the second half when they go up by, I think, 13 or 14 points. I think it was 13. Thought, hey, maybe they go on a big run here. They can extend it to 16, maybe even 20. But they just lack that punch. They lack that punch. It's the same thing as last year. They lack that punch. They times last year they would go up big in games against ACC teams too, and they just wouldn't put the hammer down. They'd win, but they wouldn't put the hammer down. And it matters for KenPom and for the net rankings, because I imagine that Syracuse is going to fall in both of the advanced categories, which do matter come tournament selection time, which, by the way, I think Syracuse basketball is very far from tournament conversation. I mean, look, if they can beat Texas on Thursday next week in 9 days, fine. Okay, you got me. Now we can really talk. Until then, tournament. How about break 500 this season? Let's start there. Like I said off the top of this podcast, I'm going to tell you how I really feel. And I am sorry if you really want me to give you that silver lining. But what I have seen through 2 games, the first game's the first game. This is the second game. You had 8 days to prepare. Did the rust hurt you? Is it, again, something like a bye week situation since we're doing comparisons to the football team? I don't know. I guess for a start, I would like Syracuse basketball to play a lot better against Youngstown State if they can do that, hopefully. A Horizon League team. I'm looking it up right now. And then you're going to play Texas. And then one of Texas Tech or St. Joe's. How do you feel about Syracuse basketball right now? How do you feel about them? Leave a comment in the comment section below. You nervous for this season? I'm going to be here no matter what. Are you nervous? Is this going to be a bad year? It's not looking great right now. I'm not impressed with the early returns. It's early. But you know what they say? It gets late early. It's early. Or are you okay? Syracuse is 2-0. We shouldn't really complain all that much. It's not a big deal. Or are you more in wait and see? I'm definitely more worried than I was last game. Last game at least was the first game of the year. This was not. And I thought Syracuse was going to lose. I really did, but we got lucky. Got lucky. If we want to talk about Adrian Autry, we can talk about him for a tiny bit. I don't know if this season would head here. I really hope it doesn't. I don't root for this at all. I see a little bit online on social media, people talking about Adrian Autry. He's going to get year 3. He will get a third year. He's done an excellent job with recruiting, at least on paper, which is one of the things that he had to correct coming into Syracuse. The end of the Jim Boeheim era, they were not a great recruiting team. However, there is a caveat to year 3 for Adrian Autry. There's one caveat here. I've said it privately to people, and I'm pretty sure I've mentioned it on the podcast as well. But here's the deal. If this is a catastrophic season, talking like they go 8-24, which I hope it doesn't happen. I don't think it will. But if something like that happens, if they have what I would like to call a Kenny Payne Louisville season, which, by the way, he got 2 years. But if they have a Kenny Payne Louisville year, he's at minimum, he'd be on the hot seat. And at maximum, he would be gone. I'm not calling for a coaching change right now. I'm not going to sit here and say, let's fire this person, let's fire that person. Can't do it 2 games into a season right now. You can't do it when they're 2-0. They are 2-0. As weird as that sounds, they are 2-0. But it's just food for thought. That if this year does go sideways, just a food for thought. I guess the silver lining is that they are 2-0. Syracuse basketball has won both of its games to start the season. A 4-point win against Lemoyne, a 2-point win tonight against Colgate. Leave a comment in the comment section below. Your thoughts on this one. I was not impressed. I'm not thrilled. But they won the game, and at least a win is a win, I guess. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. And for your second listen, check out Locked On ACC. Alex Dono and Kenta Gibbs, they keep it real, and they bring you the truth about where your favorite ACC team stands within the conference. I imagine if they're talking basketball right now, they're probably still talking more football. But if they're talking basketball, Syracuse, way low in the ACC power rankings right now. They got to fix that in a hurry. Anyway, you can find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. If you really liked it, subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast, which, by the way, it'll be out tomorrow. We are going to go back to football on this next podcast, and we are going to talk about the upcoming matchup against Cal and preview that. So stay tuned. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. And everyone, take care.